It's the most prestigious award show in the entire history of the multiverse. The Fate Awards. Fate Route Edition. Our inaugural reward is for Best Waifu. The Best Waifu Award is given to the character that makes our hearts go Doki Doki, the strongest and the most frequent. And your nominees are Sakura Mato, Rin Tosaka, Saber Artoria, Ryder, Yukika Segusa, and the winner is... Anyone who watched my playthrough of this route probably isn't surprised by this. And honestly, there was only really 2 contenders for this title. The problem is that the rest of the characters either disappear or are a child. So it's kind of hard to see them as like the #1 romantic interest. Sakura is easily the biggest victim of this lack of screen time. She's positioned from the beginning to be the romantic interest, but then just kind of disappears. Rin tells her to fuck off, and she does so. We don't go visit her after the school incident. We don't go visit her after her brother dies. She's just not there. I now know why Sakura, despite being also one of the main girls of this story, is not as iconic as Rin and Saber. Like, I instantly recognize those two because they are everywhere, but not Sakura. And that's because she's just not around enough. If she's not a main part of this route, then that also means she's not a main part of the very first anime. And since this is also the first and a mandatory first route, some people may have just stopped playing after this. Once you have seen credits, a lot of people are just gonna be like, that was satisfying. That was a lot of hours to commit myself to. This feels like a good place to point out that I feel like that this visual novel could do with more variety within the routes. All your choices at this point are either life and death. It's a game over or a continuation of the story. There are a few like inconsequential choices and some choices that are only there to try to influence the point system towards gaining a character's affection or not, which also leads to a life and death choice. I feel like one of the strengths of visual novels is giving the player the ability to sort of craft the story to how they want it to look like. And Fate, there's a weakness for Fate, as you can't pick which route you're going to do first, at least not in the original version, and even in the updated remake, there's a recommended order. And once you're in that route, your choices are overall inconsequential, as you will inevitably get funneled back towards the one true path. As for why I picked Rin over Saber, I mean, that's a total personal choice. They're both very well written. They're both very likable. The sex scenes don't really sway me one way or the other. I just have a thing for the smarter characters usually. So Rin's the #1. But Saber very easily could be in a different cast. Or a different story even. Ryder takes third on the virtue of cool design and cool demeanor. On to the next. Justice for Segusa. Our next award is the Unsung Character Award. In every story, there are some characters that just aren't given the time they might have deserved. The Unsung Character Award goes to the characters who, if they were just given a little bit more screen time, may have been able to become an all-time fave. And your nominees are Aiko Mitsuzuri, Sakura Mato, Issei Ryodo, Caster, Yukika Segusa, and the winner is... Okay, before we get too far into this video, I think Now is the perfect time to set up that I understand it is a bit strange to be scoring what is essentially 1/3 of the story. I understand that some of the things that I'm going to be complaining about and asking for are going to be addressed in other routes, or at the very least could have been. That being said, this route is its own story. It has its own themes, it has its own moral, it has its own anime that is not connected to the other animes. This route, only connection to the other routes is they happen with the same characters in like a parallel universe. If it was like my time travel theory that didn't pan out, and each route led into the next, this review probably wouldn't be happening right now, because the stories lead into each other. But the fact that you could watch each of these routes anime without watching the others and not getting confused makes it me feel like it's fair to score each route separately. Anyway, originally this award was gonna go to Kotomine, but in the end, he kind of turned out to be the main villain, so calling him unsung felt a little disingenuous. I feel like missed opportunity abounds in this story. I really feel like that we should have spent more time trying to figure out who the other masters were. Like a lot more time investigating, because that just sounds fun to me. As it stands now, most of the masters in this route either just come up to Amiya at some point and say, yo, I'm a master, here's my servant, or they're dead. We had set up this idea that there was another magus at the school who was one of the other masters. We gave all these characters who were basically inconsequential sprites to set up this idea that like one of them has to be the one that has this other master, and since none of them have done anything important yet, it could be any of them. But we never even find out who the other master at the school is in this route. Now, we'll probably do it in the other route. I don't know how that's going to be done. It might not even be this mystery thing. Now that this master has already been jobbed out, I don't really know how I'm supposed to take them seriously. Let me go into more specifics with my top 3. Mitsuzuri is this cool, confident archer student. She has her own spot in the intro video. She's close friends with Rin, or as close as anyone can be to Rin at the beginning of the story. She has a past history with Amiya, and she has no impact on the story at all. The last we hear of her, we hear third hand that she was assaulted by a molester, got injured, and then Amiya says something really shitty about her. That sucks. We don't even get to see if she's okay. Like, I feel like there's a missed opportunity with showing how normal people deal with this world of exceptionally dark magic. And let's be clear, Amiya is not a normal person. Speaking of magic, what's up with Caster? I mean, she's got all these cool abilities. She got a great design. She's super evil, and she gets completely jobbed out in this route. She sets herself up like she's going to be the next big villain now that Rider and Berserker are out of the way, and then is just completely blown away to set up for Gilgamesh. And this is what I'm talking about. It's gonna be really hard to take her seriously now that I've seen her turned into a pincushion. This taking Caster seriously problem is only going to be worsened by the fact that the story basically tells us the only people that have a chance against Saber are Hercules, Gilgamesh, and maybe Archer or Lancer on a good day. They don't even get me started on Assassin, Jesus Christ. And finally, there's Segusa. Hello, justice for Segusa. Where is her spin-off rhythm game? Look how cute she is. What? Give this girl control of this entire franchise. This is why people have so much trouble getting into Fate. They don't know about Segusa. Moving on. Our next award is for the best worker. In a battle series like this, the fight scenes are very important. But the best worker award is not who is the best fighter, who would be the strongest. The best worker award is for the fighter whose fight scenes are the most interesting, whose contributions to each of their fights raises the level of the story as a whole. And your nominees are Shiro, Amiya, Saber Artoria. Berserker Hercules. Rider Rin Tosaka. And the winner is the fight scenes in this are amazing, and considering that this is a visual novel, that should be impossible. The use of the CGs and the effects art and the motion and the descriptions themselves, it's all great. Like, when he described Amiya's arm as looking like that of a spider's, that's disgusting. That is such a fascinating way to describe a badly broken arm. It's such an interesting use of word choice. The fight scenes are littered with stuff like this. Even though I don't really like Shiro, he absolutely needed to be the one to win this award because he has the most fights and they are all great. To the absolute hopelessness of his fight with Lancer, to the desperation of his fight with Hercules where he smashes his bow against Hercules' back to no effect, and the absolute satisfying moment of the finale of the Kodomine fight. Amiya is at his most likable in the heat of battle. And pretty much everyone who has a fight has at least one good scene in those fights. Saber's trash talking is great. Rin's moment against Hercules is super smart and super cool. Gate of Babylon is super interesting. The summoning of Pegasus is super cool. Hercules' overwhelming presence is so awesome. I'm not even really the kind of person who's really into fight scenes anyway, but it's incredible, really. My one complaint, and yeah, I know I just had to get something in there, is that almost every fight, if not every fight, ends with like an ass pull. Like there's always some other thing that comes into play suddenly with oftentimes no explanation, or at least no satisfying explanation. Caliburn, the healing factor, Avalon, just summoning Saber out of nowhere. I'm fine with the occasional like ass pull, but like every fight is settled this way. It's much more satisfying for me for the heroes to outmaneuver, outsmart, hell, even outpower is more interesting to me. Next up is the Best Hero Award. The Best Hero Award doesn't simply go to the protagonist of the story. There's a lot of factors that work into something like this. This character might be the most moral, or might be the character you most want to hang out with because they're so likable. This is the character that you expect to save the day at the end. This is the character who you are rooting for to come out on top when the credits roll. And your nominees are Shiro Amiya, Saber Artoria, Rin Tosaka, Archer, Ilyasville von Einsberg. And the winner is Alright, let's get this out of the way first. Amiya Shiro is completely terrible about 90% of the time. He's incredibly sexist, he's remarkably stupid, and almost every conflict in the entire story only happens because he decides to wander off by himself like an easily distracted child. I think the most egregious of all these is when he just wanders off when Saber's incapacitated and then is kidnapped by Ilya. He only leaves to get some time to think to himself. He lives on like a giant compound. There's plenty of place where he could just stop and think. He doesn't need to wander off into the park where he keeps meeting the person who at the time is his greatest threat. The only reason he manages to take third is because, as I said earlier, his fight scenes are great. His relationship with Ilya, Saber, and Rin are all good, and as the actual protagonist of the story, we see a lot of him, and a lot of the conflicts that he created are solved by him. The theme of this story is holding oneself as an ideal. We see this through both Shiro and Saber as they try to hold themselves to this impossible standard that ends up hurting the people around them that they are trying to help. I'm not really sure we get a conclusion to this theme though. In the end, Saber ends up sacrificing literally everything. She sacrifices her future with Shiro, she sacrifices the possibility of saving her kingdom, she sacrifices the possibility of an Arturia who got to live the life of a normal girl, and let's not forget, she flat out sacrifices her life at the very end. The only thing she really gets out of this is that she isn't forced to continue the cycle of endless fighting that comes with the Holy Grail War. And to that I say, does she really escape it? I mean, if you think about it, does she really? Meanwhile, Shiro kind of takes like a half measure here. Yeah, he sacrifices his future life of Saber. He sacrifices not ending that tragedy 10 years ago. But in not ending the tragedy, he's also kind of being selfish because he's sacrificing all the people who died and all those tortured orphans for his life and his own moral compass. And don't get me wrong, it's correct that they didn't take the Holy Grail from Kodamine when he offered it, because it was clearly a trap, but they didn't list that as a reason why they didn't take it. They list all these other reasons. In the end, Saber still gets the win here though, because she is still really likable, and I have no moral complaints about her actions here. I feel like everything she did made sense from the perspective of someone who is lawful good. I do, however, kind of feel that Amiya and Saber may have made the same mistake Kiritsugu did 10 years ago, where they've only really pushed the problem down the road. Where, yes, they destroyed the Holy Grail, just like Kiritsugu did, but are the Iceburns really going to give up their shot at a Holy Grail? Is the church going to just move on and not pursue this Holy Grail any further? They did send another person to replace Kodamine. There's no guarantee that this person is a step up. Even if those two are out of the equation, what's to stop any other group of mages to start this up again? For all they sacrificed, how much do they really accomplish? Meanwhile, we have Rain here coming in second because she's not as involved as Saber and Amiya are. During the very back end of the conflict, she's kind of moved to a support role almost exclusively, but she still goes over Amiya because I feel like she would have made a better protagonist than Shiro does to this story. Not only is she more likable than Amiya, as she does not spew endless sexist stupid garbage from her mouth, she's also smarter than him, which is always a satisfying thing to have as a protagonist, but she doesn't suffer from this common shonen problem of this overdog disguised as the underdog thing. Mia is supposed to be seen as this underdog because he's just new to this world of magic. He's not as involved. He isn't good at it. But despite this, he is probably the most powerful mage in the story with his instant ability of projection and his healing factor. All the forces in the world are here to help him. He also has one of the strongest, if not the strongest servant on his side. All the odds are in Amiya's favor from the beginning of this story. Meanwhile, Rain, yes, she's a very talented mage, but every time she does something, it's through her own ingenuity, not these powers that she's been blessed with. Her shot on Hercules is so much more satisfying than killing him with Caliburn because she did that. She put work in to make that happen instead of just making Caliburn just out of nowhere. I'd even go so far to say that even Shinji probably would have made a better protagonist than Amiya. Now you'd have to tone down him being a complete piece of shit, but if you really look at it, he is the total underdog in this story, where he has no actual magical abilities, he has a much weaker servant, and he has very little experience in this world. Dude had no chance. Even physically, he wasn't on the same level as the rest of these people, as he's running away from everyone as they charge after him. No shot. True underdog. Still a piece of shit, though. Next, of course, has to be the best villain award. The best villain may be the character with the most depraved actions in the story. Or it might simply be the character you're most looking forward to seeing get their comeuppance. At the end, the best villain award goes to the character who, while they are the opposition, the story is at its best. And your nominees are Shinji Mato, Lancer Chu Tulane, Ilyasville von Einsberg, Kodomine Kire, Archer Gilgamesh. And the winner is... Where it is kind of hard to find someone to consistently root for in Fate Day Night, it is very, very easy to find people to root against, as it has an absolutely fantastic rogues gallery here. Gilgamesh, Shinji, Kodomine, and Ilya are all good enough villains to hold this story by themselves. They all could have been the main antagonists, and this would have been great. Lancer's pretty interesting too, but it's just, as far as villainy goes, he's not on their level. Just starting with Gilgamesh, dude is so powerful, overwhelming, so arrogant, and his creepy obsession with Saber, it makes him all so detestable. But the reason he doesn't meddle here is because he shows up so late into the story. I've already put passion into these other characters. I don't have any more room to really hate you like I hate these other people. Like, how am I supposed to hate Gilgamesh for being a creep when I already hate Shinji Mato, that son of a bitch, so much for being such a goddamn creep? Shinji is special, you know? Because you start out like, oh, this guy's a douchebag, I hate him. And then every time he shows up, he manages to dig himself just a little bit lower. I love how much I despise this fucking guy. And I love how satisfying it is to like chase him around the school as he's running away like a complete chicken shit. Meanwhile, Kodomine, who from the very beginning is super creepy, super suspicious, but you can't really be sure is a villain 100%, especially because of his relationship with Reen. Maybe he's just creepy, maybe he's a red herring, whatever. You may suspect that he's a bad guy, so it's not going to be too surprising to you when you find out that he is. So how do they reveal it? Why, they reveal it via the most heinous fucking thing I have probably seen in my entire life. They reveal it via Kodomine's factory of children batteries that he's using to fuel his horrible monster of a human known as Gilgamesh. If you can even call him a human. You probably can't. Plus he's got this thing underneath a church, just as a little salt in the wound there. Despite being one of the most despicable human beings ever, Kodomine still manages to show just a little itty bit of humanity in him having given Reen her sword. It doesn't redeem him, it doesn't even come close to redeeming him, but it just shows just a little layer underneath the pure black. Even though Kodomine is a great villain, even though Kodomine is the main villain of this route, the fact is, he's only the second best villain in this route, as he is second to my girl, Ilyasville von Einsberg, a true legend that I will never forget. Ilya is number one because when she was the main villain, I was having my most fun. Every time she was on screen, everything just shot up. Stocks go up. You know what I'm talking about? She's so confident. She's so lively. The dissonance between this cheerful little girl and the awful shit she can say is just amazing. When Ilya's not on the screen, you should be asking yourself, where's Ilya? This brat is so confident because she has been raised to understand that she isn't supposed to win, she is going to win. It's just a fact. And she's so confident, she will tell everybody that her servant, her unstoppable beat you to death stick, is Hercules. And you can know about it because he's the best. And even if you do know about it, there's nothing you can do to stop it. And she killed Shinji. Did Kotomine kill anybody that I cared about? No. Maybe I would have liked that foreign master, but I never met her, so fuck, it doesn't mean anything to me. Ilya killing Shinji is huge, and she's got layers too. She's a victim of this. She was contaminated at a young age with this terrible mindset. This is also when Amiya is at his most likable. When he sees that Ilya is still so young, she can still be saved. She can still be salvaged from this. But she is so toxic, she is so blackened that there's really no hope for her until she is defeated. And as much as I was rooting against the rest of the antagonists, honestly, when Ilya got taken out of the fight, I was really just hoping and waiting for her to find her way back into it. And finally, we come to our most important award. An award saved only for the most legendary of the legendary. The Best Character Award. And your nominees are Rin Tosaka, Ilyasville von Einsberg, Shinji Mato, Saber Artoria, Kotomine Kirei. And the winner is... Okay, our final score and our final thoughts. If you think that score is too high or too low, I'd ask you to at least first check the description to see how I score these things out of 10 before you decide to comment on that. That being said, this probably should have been a 6. I have so many problems with this story. I feel like all the fights are an ass pull. I feel like Amiya is just unlikable, especially towards the beginning, especially with how he talks about women constantly. The sex scenes are jarring, weird, especially the first one. I feel like missed opportunities abound across the story. Everything that happens is just so conveniently timed. People are moving around in places that don't make sense, but they have to be there because the plot needs them to be there. And there's tons of things that are just strange to me and don't make sense, and I'm afraid they will never make sense even after I finish all the routes. But still, when I was editing the scene where Saber disappears, I started to tear up. Somewhere along the line, me and Amiya Shiro crossed paths and switched. I was okay with Saber disappearing. I didn't want it to happen, but I was okay with it. I'd accepted it. And Amiya was in denial. He was going to prevent it from happening at all costs. And somewhere that switched. Somewhere, Amiya became okay with it, preferring for it not to happen, but accepting that it was a necessity. And I wasn't anymore. Because suddenly, I had taken on this mantra that he kept saying of it being unfair to her. Somewhere, I had gotten so connected into this character that I just was not okay with her just dying in the past. It wasn't okay anymore. It's amazing. Somehow, despite all my grievances, I became connected with these characters. I feel like they're a part of me. I'm going to remember them forever. So to say that it's a 6 out of 10, sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't like it, it's just not true. The 7, because I definitely like this. There are things that bother me. There are things that stick out to me. But I still like this a lot. That entire top 5 character lists all have moments where my true emotions were like exposed. When I saw Gilgamesh was gonna kill Ilya, I gasped. When I saw Reen State in chapter 15, I was devastated. I was sure she was gone, and that killed me. Watching Saber disappear, at the time, I still hadn't accepted it until I was editing it later. I hadn't accepted it until then. That's how connected I was. I refused to accept it. Meanwhile, Kotomine and Shinji, their downfalls are so satisfying because they are so despicable. So, in the end, that's fate. 7 out of 10. A bunch of fantastic characters in a heavily flawed story. maybe the next story they're in is a bit better.